I woke up this morning to the sound of Sophie crying. It wasn't the kind of cry that could be ignored. It was the sharp, insistent cry that says, "I need something, and I need it now." I glanced at the clock. 5:45 a.m. My first thought was, please, not today. I had hoped to sleep in just a little bit longer, to steal a few more minutes of rest before the chaos began. But no such luck. Sophie's cries echoed through the baby monitor, cutting through the silence of the early morning. I dragged myself out of bed and stumbled into her room. She was sitting in her crib, holding her blankie tightly to her chest. Her eyes were red, puffy from crying. "Mommy, I want to go downstairs," she whined. I lifted her out of the crib, kissed her forehead and said, "Okay, sweet girl, let's go downstairs." She immediately stopped crying, snuggling into my arms like everything was fine. But I could feel the weight of the day already settling in, the exhaustion, the heaviness. I wasn't ready for today. The moment I put her down on the floor, she started running circles around me, asking for breakfast. I was barely awake, trying to rub the sleep from my eyes, but Sophie had already moved on to the next thing. She wanted her favorite cereal. Not the one I had just poured for her, but the other one, the one that was on the top shelf of the pantry, out of her reach. "No, not that one," she screamed when I handed her the bowl. She pushed it away, her tiny fists clenched and her face turned bright red. I tried to calm her down. "It's okay, Sophie. Let's eat this one today, and tomorrow I'll get the other one for you." But she didn't hear me. Her tantrum escalated. Her body stiffened and she let out another wail. I felt my patience slipping. I knew I should stay calm, but the overwhelming exhaustion of the last few days, combined with the relentless noise and demands, was wearing me thin. I tried to take a deep breath, but I couldn't help the frustration that was building inside me. I felt like I was drowning in the noise, the mess, and the constant neediness. The last few days had felt like this. One meltdown after another. Sophie was going through a phase that felt like it would never end. She didn't want to eat the right food. She didn't want to put on the clothes I picked out. She didn't want to go to the park when I said we should. Everything was a battle, and I was losing. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Sophie, please, you need to calm down." But instead, she threw herself on the floor, crying harder now. I wanted to cry with her. I knelt beside her, rubbing her back, trying to comfort her, but it felt like the harder I tried, the worse it got. It was as if nothing I did was enough. And I realized, right there, that I was too tired to fix it, too tired to pretend that I had it all together. When she finally calmed down enough to sit up, I managed to get her dressed, but the morning had already gone off the rails. I didn't have time to make myself breakfast. I barely had time to take a shower before the clock ticked past 8 and Liam needed to be ready for school. Liam was moving at his usual pace, slow, methodical, as if time wasn't already running out. "Mom, I can't find my other sock," he said as he rummaged through the laundry basket. I sighed. Of course he couldn't find his sock. Of course this was happening on a morning when everything already felt like it was falling apart. I found the sock, helped him with his backpack, and got him out the door just in time. Sophie had now decided she wanted to go with him, clinging to my leg as I tried to get him out the door. "I want to go," she demanded, her face scrunched up in frustration. "I'm sorry, baby, you can't come with us today," I explained, but she wasn't having it. The tears started again. She cried so hard that I felt my own chest tighten, my own eyes stinging with tears that I didn't want to let fall. I kissed Liam goodbye, sent him off to school, and then I turned to Sophie, still crying at the door. I wasn't sure how I could comfort her today. I wasn't sure if I had the strength left to do it, but I did my best. I picked her up, held her close, and whispered, "I know, sweetie. I know you're upset, but we'll be okay. I promise." But as I held her, I felt the weight of the day press down on me. Everything felt too much. The noise, the mess, the constant need for attention. I tried to remind myself that this was just a phase, that this would pass, that I was doing my best. But right then, none of it felt like enough. I carried Sophie back to the living room, still holding her tightly to my chest as she hiccuped between sobs. The tears were slowing down, but her little body was still tense, still clinging to the frustration that had taken over her. I sat down on the couch, bouncing her lightly in my arms, trying to soothe her as I ran my fingers through her hair. I kept telling myself, "She's just a toddler. This is normal. She'll get over it. She's tired. She's hungry. She's frustrated because she's learning how to express herself." And yet, as I tried to comfort her, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was failing her. The tantrum, the meltdown, the never-ending cycle of demands and disappointments. It all felt like it was starting to wear me down. Sophie finally settled into my arms, her little face pressed into my shoulder as she let out one last sob. Her breathing was shallow, but she was quiet now. For a moment, I just sat there, holding her, trying to feel some sense of calm that seemed to be so far out of my reach. But then the silence in the house felt too loud, almost deafening. I felt like I could hear my own heartbeat, thumping in my ears. I hadn't even made it through the morning yet, and already everything felt like too much. I tried to focus on the quiet moments, the way Sophie's breath had slowed, the way she relaxed into my arms. But even then, I could feel the weight of the rest of the day looming over me. The laundry still needed to be folded, the kitchen was still a disaster, and I hadn't even started the list of things I promised myself I would do. The mess was everywhere, not just in the house, but inside of me too. When I finally managed to put Sophie down for her nap, I felt like I could breathe again. For a moment, it felt like I could let go. I didn't have to fix anything. I didn't have to pretend everything was fine. I could just be. But the second she was asleep, I found myself pacing around the house, looking at the things I hadn't done, the dishes, the laundry, the piles of papers on the counter. It felt like the world was pressing in on me from all sides, and no matter how much I tried, I could never quite catch up. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. It was almost 11 a.m. I still had a few hours before Sophie woke up, so I tried to focus on getting something done. I started with the laundry. As I folded the clothes, my mind wandered back to the morning, to Sophie's tantrum, to how I felt so helpless in that moment. Why did I let it get to me? Why couldn't I just stay calm and collected? I folded another shirt, trying to distract myself from the guilt that gnawed at me. I reminded myself, it's just a phase. It's just a bad day. It doesn't mean I'm a bad mom. But I wasn't sure if I believed that yet. The guilt was overwhelming. As I finished folding the laundry, I heard Sophie stir in her room. She wasn't awake yet, but I could hear her shifting, the soft rustle of blankets. I sighed and sat down on the couch, trying to ground myself for whatever the next phase of the day would bring. The problem wasn't just Sophie's tantrums. The problem was that everything felt like it was happening all at once. Work, motherhood, self-care. It was like trying to juggle flaming torches while running on a treadmill. No matter how much I tried to keep everything under control, it all felt like it was going to crash down at any moment. I tried to remind myself that I had made progress, that I had acknowledged my feelings, that I wasn't just pushing through the day without noticing how I felt. But still, it felt like I was walking a tightrope, always one wrong step away from falling. When Sophie woke up, her little face lit up with that innocent smile that always melted my heart. "Mommy!" she exclaimed, holding her arms up to me. I picked her up, kissed her forehead, and felt a small wave of relief. We spent the next hour playing together, her laughter filling the air as we built a tower out of blocks. In that moment, everything felt simple. Everything felt real. And for a few minutes, I let myself forget about the mess and the guilt. But then, of course, the cycle started again. Sophie wanted a snack. She wanted to go outside. She wanted me to play with her in the exact way she imagined. And I was still trying to keep up, still trying to balance everything, when I felt like I was barely holding it all together. It wasn't that I didn't love being a mom. It was that I couldn't keep up with the constant demands. I couldn't always be the perfect mom who had it all together. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay. By the time the afternoon rolled around, I was exhausted. Sophie had asked for her third snack of the day. Liam had come home from school with a mountain of homework, and the house still looked like a tornado had passed through. I couldn't remember the last time I'd had a quiet moment to myself. It felt like my life was just one endless cycle of meeting needs and fixing messes. Sophie once again was crying because I couldn't give her the exact snack she wanted. She had decided quite suddenly that the apple slices I gave her weren't sweet enough. As her tears escalated, I felt that familiar frustration bubbling inside me. It was the kind of frustration that makes you question if you're doing anything right. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes for a moment, and reminded myself to slow down. This is a phase. She's 3. I repeated these things in my mind like a mantra, but even as I said them, I couldn't shake the feeling of being completely overwhelmed. I set her down in the kitchen and quickly made a new snack, the one I knew she'd accept. As I worked, I felt my mind start to wander, to replay every little moment of the day. The meltdown over the cereal, the frustration I felt when I couldn't calm her down, the guilt that seemed to linger after every burst of anger. I wondered, once again, if I was doing this all wrong. I handed her the new snack, and the moment the apple slices hit the table, her tears stopped. Just like that. She smiled at me, as though nothing had ever been wrong. I couldn't help but feel a little defeated. It wasn't that I was angry with her. It was that I was angry with myself. Why did it have to be so hard? Why did I always feel like I was barely keeping it together? Liam was sitting at the kitchen table, his head buried in a pile of schoolwork. I tried to focus on him, but even as I asked him how his day had gone, I felt myself drift back to the chaos in my own mind. He seemed to notice, though. He looked up from his homework, his eyes softening as he studied me. "Are you okay, Mom?" he asked, his voice quiet but sincere. I smiled at him, trying to brush off the exhaustion. "I'm fine, Liam. Just tired, that's all." But he didn't buy it. "You sure? You look really tired." He said it without judgment, without expectation, just concern. And in that moment, it hit me. My kids were starting to see it. They could tell when I was struggling. They could tell when I was running on empty. And it made me realize something else. I wasn't just showing up for them in the ways I thought I was. I was physically there, yes, but emotionally, mentally, I wasn't giving them the version of me I wanted them to see. I shook my head, trying to shake off the thoughts. "I'm okay, really. Just one of those days, you know?" I tried to laugh it off, but it felt hollow. I could tell Liam wasn't convinced, but he didn't press me further. Instead, he went back to his homework, the soft scratching of his pencil against paper the only sound in the room. I sat with him for a while, trying to focus on the moment, trying to ignore the nagging guilt that kept creeping back. The afternoon passed in a blur. Sophie had calmed down after her snack, but by the time dinner rolled around, I could already feel myself running out of steam. The kitchen had somehow gotten messier. The laundry was still piling up. And my to-do list was staring at me from the counter, growing longer with every passing minute. But as I started preparing dinner, I tried to remind myself again that this was normal, that some days were going to feel messy. Some days, everything would fall apart, and I'd feel like I was drowning in the chaos. But that didn't mean I wasn't doing my best. That didn't mean I wasn't showing up, even if I wasn't doing it perfectly. Dinner was, of course, a disaster. Sophie refused to eat anything I made. Liam argued with me about what he wanted, and the kitchen got even messier. At one point, Sophie threw her spoon on the floor, crying that she wanted macaroni and cheese instead. I could feel my patience thinning again, but instead of snapping, I took a deep breath and looked at her. "Okay, sweetie. Let's try again tomorrow. Tonight I made this, but tomorrow we can have macaroni and cheese." For a second, I wondered if she understood what I was saying, but then she looked up at me with those wide, trusting eyes and smiled. "Tomorrow?" she asked. I nodded. "Tomorrow." And in that moment, I realized something. I had spent so much of the day trying to control everything, the tantrums, the food, the mess. But the truth was, I couldn't control any of it. I could only show up. I could only do my best, even when things didn't go as planned. After dinner, I had to take a moment. I wasn't sure if it was the exhaustion, the constant noise, or the guilt that had been piling up all day, but I felt like I needed to sit in the quiet for just a second before I lost it completely. Sophie was playing with her blocks, Liam was still working on his homework, and the house was finally settling into that late-night calm. The day had been long. It had been filled with chaos, with meltdowns, with moments that made me question everything I thought I knew about motherhood. I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the mess once again. There were dirty dishes everywhere, food crumbs scattered across the counter, and toys strewn across the floor. The laundry was still sitting in the corner of the room, untouched. The house, in short, was a disaster, and it was exactly how it had been all day. But then, I stopped myself. I took a deep breath. I reminded myself that this was life. It wasn't going to be perfect. It wasn't going to be Instagram-worthy, but it was real, and that, in its own way, was beautiful. Sophie came up to me with her stuffed bunny in tow, her little hands reaching for mine. "Mommy, play?" she asked, her voice soft, and for a brief moment, all the frustration I had been feeling melted away. I nodded. "Okay, baby, let's play." We spent the next hour sitting on the floor, building towers with blocks, knocking them over, and giggling as we did. For a moment, everything felt simple again, not perfect, but real. Sophie was happy. Liam was quietly working in the other room. The world was spinning on, and I was exactly where I needed to be. When bedtime came, I tucked both kids in with a sense of relief. Sophie climbed into her bed, her bunny tucked under her arm, and Liam snuggled into his covers, his tired eyes already closing. I kissed them both goodnight, whispered how much I loved them, and stood in the doorway, watching them drift off to sleep. And I thought about the day, about the chaos, the mess, the tantrums, the moments when I thought I was failing. I thought about how, at times, it felt like I was drowning. But in those quiet moments, when I was sitting on the floor with Sophie, when I was listening to Liam talk about his day, I realized something. I wasn't failing. I was living. It wasn't about doing everything perfectly. It wasn't about keeping up with the endless to-do list or having the cleanest house. It was about showing up. It was about being there for my kids, even when I was at my breaking point. It was about loving them in all their messiness, and loving myself in the same way. I sat down on the couch after I finished in their rooms, just for a few minutes. I needed to let my mind catch up to my body. The exhaustion was starting to catch up with me, but there was a quiet peace in that. The day had been hard. I had lost my patience more times than I'd like to admit, but I was still here. And that, for now, was enough. I picked up my phone and checked the time. It was already past 10:30 p.m. The house was still a mess, but the world wasn't going to fall apart because of a few dirty dishes. I took a deep breath, let it out slowly, and decided to let go of the guilt that had been hanging over me all day. I didn't have to do everything perfectly. I just had to show up. As I settled into bed, I thought about tomorrow. It would probably be more of the same. The chaos, the mess, the never-ending demands. But for once, I wasn't dreading it. I was ready for it. I closed my eyes, and as I drifted off to sleep, I whispered to myself, "Tomorrow is a new day, and I will be enough."